the truth is, I wanted to go into the movie theater with the anticipation of this experience being that of a roller coaster. I wanted the highs, I wanted the lows, but I wanted to walk away from that machine knowing that I was thoroughly entertained. I was bought the highs, I was bought the lows, and when the ride ended, it was a well put together experience. And that was Fantastic Four First Steps. And definitely better than I thought it was going to be. Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the HTR podcast. And in this episode, we are going to talk about the future of comic book movies, the compare and contrast between Fantastic Four First Steps. Has been out for a while now, so it's likely been spoiled, talked about, reviewed, to hell. Everybody's reviewed it like we did with the Superman, review in episode 10 of the podcast. We're going to talk about it a great deal and kind of talk about what went right. It's been out for a while. I've had time to sit on the movie, you watch some clips over again. You don't have to go to the movie theater and see it again. All the clips are online. And if you've seen the trailer, honestly, you kind of saw the movie, So that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. So, let's jump right into it. I released a short here on the HTR podcast channel. Right after the movie, I released a short because I had to. I said, let me just get some quick thoughts out about this movie in a short, right? And the key takeaway from that is that I enjoyed Fantastic Four First Steps more than I enjoyed James Gunn's Superman 2025. Now, again, that does not make James Gunn's Superman movie a bad one. I did, I'm sat on like a 6 out of 10, which isn't bad. It's not great. It's not bad. It's like, it could be better with improvements or some obvious flares held it back. I'm not going to talk too much about Superman. Watch episode 10 if you want my true thoughts on James Gunn's Superman movie. But like I said in that short, I enjoyed Fantastic Four First Steps more as an overall comic book movie. It felt more like a comic book movie. Now, it is not without its faults, though. We can talk about some of the things that stood out, that made it solid, made it great, in my opinion. And then some of the things that had me scratching my head or ready to fall asleep or walk out, whatever. Because there were some parts, and some parts that generally, or just the overall movie just generally shocked me. I went in with Fantastic Four First Steps with an extremely low bar. Last MCU movie I saw was Thunderbolts. The last MCU movie I probably enjoyed, maybe Infinity War or Endgame, And Endgame, once you look at it again, is certainly not without fault. Solid movie. But I was going into Fantastic Four First Steps extremely apprehensive. Not judging the movie, right? I said I'm going to see it. I've always had a soft spot for the Fantastic Four, especially growing up. So I was going to see it, much like James Gunn's Superman 2025. I was hella concerned before going into that movie, and we still went and saw it. Same thing here with Fantastic Four First Steps. One of the first pros is that the movie was shot extremely well. Like, it was nice, sharp, that 60s retro futuristic alternative future vibe meshed really well with this universe. I'm glad we could potentially see more of it. We'll talk about that a little bit more down the road, a little towards spoilers. But I like the overall retro futuristic aesthetic and field of Earth 828. Right? That's established, one of the first shots in the movie. That's established. This is Earth 828. And it's pretty cool. I like what, Shackman did. And he based that off Jack Kirby's birthday, August, 28th. So that's pretty cool. So it's Earth 828. This is no surprise. Everybody knew this was going to be an alternate Earth. You know what I mean? We were just unsure on how it was all going to come to an end based off of the post-credit scene in Thunderbolts / New Avengers. It was Thunderbolts before it came. It was Thunderbolts before it went to the movie theater. It was New Avengers once it came out. But everybody was kind of intrigued on as to how the Fantastic Four movie would end. But it was shot really well. I saw it in IMAX. It was labeled that it was shot for IMAX, and it shows at time. The CGI looked better than I thought it was going to be, especially The Thing. The Thing looked better in the movie than he did in the trailer. Ben Grimm sounded better in the movie than he did in the trailer. You can tell some changes were made once, Marvel and everybody, Marvel, Disney, received feedback from those trailers and Fantastic Four's initial, test screenings. There was some reshoots ordered and things. Some things changed up about the movie before it came out. And for once, it's done in at least face value. It's done in a positive light. It doesn't muck the movie up. It doesn't have odd continuity instances. The pacing is pretty consistent. I love how the movie started off with like this montage of establishing the Fantastic Four as heroes on Earth 828, a brief explanation on how they got their powers, how they came back to Earth. It was, it was expedited. It was rather quickly. We did not spend a lot of time on their origin story. And I was like, yes, okay, cool. Already established heroes, quick, backstory into how they got their powers, where they came from, how long they've been doing it. And then we move on to, their family dynamic, and then bam, core plot starts right up. You get right into it. I was scratching my head like, man, I hope we're getting past this family dynamic and all this, although it was funny and a lot of the humor in that time, during that time stretch, was welcoming, but the pacing was handled well. But it was shot well. The costumes looked nice and bright and blue. Better than I thought. At first, I didn't like them looking at the promo art. This movie had some odd marketing attached to it. Fantastic Four First Steps had some very strange marketing attached to it because I did not like a lot of the early stuff they were putting out. I was a little concerned. I'm like, man, why does this look campy? Why does this look too bright? This looks like a Raimi movie. And then I found out they were inspired by some of Raimi's work. And so it showed. And it has like Spider-Man 3 feel to it. I'm not sorry, not Spider-Man 3. God, no. Spider-Man 2. One of the best comic book movies cut. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. That's the vibes it gave me. Even Spider-Man 2 felt like it could be on an alternative Earth. Obviously, and it is. It's not the MCU. But just like how Tobey's Spider-Man and his trilogy felt just like it was in a closed universe that could stand on its own. That's how Fantastic Four First Steps felt. There are no other heroes on Earth 828. At least that's mentioned. If there's any Easter eggs, they were subtle as hell. But there's no obvious mentions of other, heroes that we're more familiar with on Earth 828 getting busy. And when the main baddie showed up, Galactus, no surprise. Even when the main baddie showed up, there was no mention of any other heroes being concerned or involved. None of that. But the movie was shot well. It's a strong positive. We're on with some of the. I know I'm all over the place, and that's just how these reviews are. I think they come out better when some of the best parts come to mind and some of the worst parts come to mind. Unscripted, no notes. This is just fresh off the dome. My experience that I'm sharing here with y'all on this podcast episode. But it was shot well. No gripes there. It looked way better than Superman 2025. Superman had like some instances in the movie where it was like grainy and just not clear, a little blurry even. Looked unfinished. Fantastic Four, especially because there were a lot of daytime action scenes, especially towards the end. And it's in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling that. But especially towards the end. A lot of 80% of the action, minus some nighttime chase scenes, when the Silver Surfer arrives. Shia LaBeouf. We'll get to her in a second, too. But minus that, though, the daytime shots looked really good. looked over, especially with The Thing. And I had did some research, and the director, Shankman, said he wanted to use as many practical sets and props as possible. Salute to that angle or wanting to go in that direction, because I think it paid off. The sets felt tangible. They felt real. They felt like you can reach out and touch them. Like the actors and actress and Vanessa Kirby and the supporting other actresses in the movie felt like they could interact with these environments. Like they were actually on true sets. So salute to the director for that. I think it paid off. I think it helped with the overall, that futuristic aesthetic of the movie. You know, the technology wasn't anything too crazy or over the top, with the exception of one of the biggest issues I have with the movie. We'll talk about it in the cons. But, you know, other than that, the environmental shots, the Baxter building looked really good. Not saying they didn't use CGI, but in some scenes, it was hard to tell what's CGI and what's practical. Another pro was Joseph Quinn as Johnny freaking Storm. I like Joseph Quinn. I was 50-50 with the casting. I like Joseph Quinn. We're not going to talk about him in Gladiator 2. You know, I really didn't like him in Gladiator 2. In fact, I was shocked, surprised that was even Joseph Quinn. When I saw Gladiator 2, I'm like, why does this guy look familiar? Normally when I watch movies and if I can't recognize the actor or the actress, or it's a new name or a new face I'm not familiar with, I jump on IMDb and I familiarize myself, or I try to just get a better understanding of the actor or actress, or see what they've been in before prior to what I'm watching them in now, even if that's smaller roles. Joseph Quinn came over from Stranger Things, you know, got us come up in Stranger Things, hell of a role. You know, I think it was Eddie. Everybody know about his solid guitar solo, but he was just overall nice side character introduction to Stranger Things. One of my favorite. You know, he's gone, but, you know, so is Stranger Things. It's dying off. Cass is getting older, doing other things. But Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, he did better than I thought. His humor was spot on. He had purpose in the movie. I think I would have liked him as like Chris Evans's Johnny Storm in the 2000s Fantastic Four movies. More of like a dark-haired brunette, but the blonde worked. I know they were going for comic accuracy or alternate Earth comic accuracy, but that's nothing. It wasn't even too distracting, you know. But every scene Johnny was in, elevated. Even when he was in his own scenes, doing his own things, trying to help them with the looming threat of Galactus, he put on. Had some of the best action scenes. He had this one scene that I thought was pretty cool that I, not to my knowledge, ever seen, but he was in their montage. It shows Johnny Storm like saving people and performing these feats. He puts out a fire by absorbing all the fire. And the scene is just well shot. The CGI looks good. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, he's putting out a fire by absorbing all the flames. He can do more of that. So that was pretty cool. Joseph Quinn, Johnny Storm, loved him. So excited to see him interact with some of the MCU characters in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. There's going to be a lot of them. Not enough. As I was looking at the cast, as I left Fantastic Four First Steps, and I'm like, Mark Ruffalo's missing. Chris Evans is missing. You know, there's some names from that cast listing that is missing. A lot of lovable characters on there. Shang-Chi, you know, the White Widow, Yelena, Sam Wilson, Captain America, you know, and everybody knows Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Doomsday. But I love Joseph Quinn, Johnny Storm. Solid casting, and I think he did a great job, especially with the material he had. He wasn't over talkative, didn't seem clunky. He seemed confident. He was trying to find his place in the team, trying to help, trying to prove that he can be an asset. He's just not capable of flying and catching on fire, saying "flame on," you know, which I can't remember if he even really said. If he did, he didn't do it enough. You know, but even in the daytime, his scenes looked good. Flirting with spoiler territory. And I said we were going to, you know, there's going to be spoilers in this podcast episode. Nothing too crazy though. But once you see the movie, if you saw it, then you know. But when Johnny has his connection with Shalla Bal, the female Silver Surfer, it forms this connection that he's able to link with her and connect with her and convert her just by his efforts and his work, and Johnny being Johnny. Not this overly goofy, hyper misogynistic character that we may have seen and loved. Sure, it was some of that. Ladies was, doting over him. But when Johnny had to get serious, he was serious. And it was welcoming. But he's trying to connect with the Silver Surfer. He's trying to connect with Shalla Bal. He has some incredible feats. He learns her language by decrypting, audio that was picked up by Reed. Pedro Pascal's, we'll get to that in a second too. But he was able to put together, like a Rosetta Stone to learn Shalla Bal's language so that he can connect with her and get her to see what Galactus is really doing. And that whole scene where he's talking to her and he's being stern and firm and he's yelling and he's not even in flames. He's in civvies, y'all. And she's up there going through it and she flies off. So Joseph Quinn, Johnny Storm, great. Not only was he good in the movie, but damn, Shankman gave him purpose. He wasn't just there, gave him purpose. Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. Let's talk about it. For the most part, a lot of us MCU fans was concerned with the casting. Nothing against Pedro Pascal. I'm not going too much into his personal beliefs. I'm judging him as an actor. He's been in some things I liked. He's been in some things I didn't like. Wonder Woman 1984, I'm looking at you. Although that movie wasn't all his fault. It was written bad, shot bad, stupid concept, plot, whatever. I just didn't like him in it. Mandalorian was great, and I didn't watch The Last of Us. But he's a well-renowned actor. He gets gigs, so that means he can put in the work. Now, he put in the work as Reed Richards. Yes. Expectations circumvented wholly because he was a solid Reed Richards. Mustache included. Even towards the end, they even gave him a little gray streak subtly on the side. The classic Reed Richards gray streaks on the side. They even gave him that. But his best weapon was his mind. Trying to solve problems, thinking of the worst so he could prepare for everything or the best possible solution. So he thinks of all the worst case scenarios. And him and Miss Fantastic or Sue Storm, they go back and forth about this. His stretchability, I thought was done well. This is something that wasn't seen a lot in the 2000s Fantastic Four. It's like they didn't know what to do with his powers. But he does use them, to save the day a few times in a montage, get busy even against Galactus. Yes, he uses it as like a tool to reach longer parts of the board and grab, other tools and just equipment. Sure. But I think it was done well. I was concerned because they didn't show a lot in the trailers towards the end. So something tells me they were still working on the CGI. So they didn't show a lot of Reed using his stretch powers in the trailer. And he didn't really use them a lot in the movie. Again, Reed's best weapon is his mind. His stretching ability is like secondary. It's actually what keeps him protected in a sense, because he can stretch and contort and widen out and he's elastic. So, it gives him a sense of durability. But Pedro Pascal actually was not a bad Reed Richards. Him too. Interesting to see him interact with, the new Avengers, the old Avengers, the new old Avengers, all of them, Because Reed Richards is Mr. Fantastic. I'm sorry, Pedro Pascal is Mr. Fantastic. Wasn't as bad as the casting as we originally thought or what we were originally concerned for. Right? At least myself. I saw a lot of noise on the net and just, here on YouTube even about loyal fans, diehard fans, casual fans being concerned about Pedro Pascal playing Reed Richards. This happened with Christian Bale. This happened with Henry Cavill too. It happened with Heath Ledger, and you see how all those roles turned out. All solid comic book movies. The Dark Knight, Man of Steel, and now Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic. You know, he's a little all over the place. He's unsure. He's like dark, but he's smart. But he's like willing to do whatever it takes, more so to save the planet. So, yeah, Pedro Pascal was a pretty. He didn't make or break the movie with his performance. I still think a lot of that charisma that helped was between Johnny Storm and The Thing, Ben Grimm. Now, Ebon Moss-Barack's Ben Grimm, The Thing. Let me just say this. No, man, I think we talked about it in one of the older podcasts, but I was not a fan of the way the CGI originally looked. When they revealed the first Fantastic Four trailer. I'm like, what is this? I know they're going for the brow and they wanted to be comic accurate, but you can tell they made some changes with reshoots and things and just fixed the CGI prior to release. I learned that they went so hard that they used specific rocks from the desert while shooting on set just to get the lighting right, to match the Thing's rocky skin tone, rock tone. And I imagine that's why the daytime shots look so well lit. And his CGI looks so sharp. I don't want to say he looks real, but it could possibly look like a really authentic bodysuit, Thing bodysuit. And better than that atrocity in the 2000s Fantastic Four. Was not a fan of that. I said at the time, man, we should have went with CGI for the Thing and not somebody in a suit. It just didn't look right, especially considering that the Thing is like a boulder, you know? And so to achieve that look, you need to go with CGI. Somebody in mocap and just CGI him. And that's when they did with Ebon Moss. And he was, better than I thought he was going to be. I didn't like seeing him in clothes. I thought it looked weird and off-putting, seeing him in like a vest and plaid, khakis and shit. But when, he's in his Fantastic Four suit and he has his beard towards the end of the movie, I'm like, I like the way the Thing looks now. Like, they just need to keep him with the Rock beard. Makes him look aggressive, makes him look tough. You know what I mean? And it was a good look. It even has some humor appeal to it, And it just goes back to what we're so used to with the Fantastic Four dynamic. And that's that banter between Johnny Storm and the Thing, Ben Grimm. It was, present in the 2000s Fantastic Four movie. It's present in the comics and the cartoons, the animated series, what have you. And it's definitely present here. And it's done well. It's not intrusive. And the jokes don't seem like they're too forced upon on you. They're very subtle. Like Reed's walking to the table and there's Lucky Charms on the table and they're talking. And he's just like, why is there cereal on the dinner table? And Johnny Storms, it just says something funny. But it's just little small things like that doesn't make the humor feel forced upon you. And then you're thinking, and then there's moments where they even give the Thing, Ben a little arc, a little subplot between him and the teacher in the city, And you can tell he's struggling with his overall look, but it's not mentioned a great deal. It's like this Ben Grimm has accepted his rocky form and is okay with it. But, he's a gentle giant. They displayed his feats in the montage. Show my man pulling a whole ship, big ship too, pulling. It's in the trailer, pulling a ship, So they're establishing that the Thing is strong, and he was doing it without ease. Just dropped the chain, walked out of the water. Tumbling buildings as he's walking. That's in the trailer too. One of my favorite scenes. Tumbling building, picks up a crane and just chugs it. It's broad daylight and it just looks so sharp, so well shot, so bright and beautiful. Galactus too, as a character. Talk about him next. Let's round out with Sue Storm, Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm, who I like too. Wasn't a girl boss or whatever y'all want to call her. She did have like a speech moment where it's like the family and, she's going outside talking about the world because Galactus wants their baby. That's spoiled in the trailer too, which I was a little shocked they put that in the trailer. But Galactus wants Franklin Reed. If you know, Franklin Reed from the comics is a powerful being. Powerful, super powerful. You know what I mean? Super powerful. So they want Sue's baby. And she goes out there and she's talking to New York. She's like, long story short, we're not giving him up. We're going to fight this. But Sue Storm was good. You know, towards the end, they did allow her to save the day. We'll talk about that in a second. Because when Galactus is revealed, it is menacing. It is ominous. It makes you feel like you are standing next to the Fantastic Four while they are there awakening Galactus. But, you know, once the Silver Surfer reveals herself to New York City, they come up with this plan to follow her back to Galactus' ship. So that's how they're able to find Galactus' ship, because Shia LaBeouf shows there, I herald your ending, I herald your beginning, I herald Galactus. So they follow her to a ship. And they get pulled in and he's welcome home. Come on in, you know? Now, here's where I start to talk about some of the roll my eyes moments of the movie. Because Sue Storm went when she was pregnant, and she is like full blown getting ready to deliver. Why she would go in space and risk her life and her baby's life is a director's creative choice. And I guess she would have had to go for Galactus to sense this and that, but he could have did it when he got to Earth and gave them the ultimatum. I don't know. But Sue Storm goes along with them. Galactus says, hey, give me the baby. Give me your cosmic baby, and I'll spare the Earth. Why does Galactus want Franklin Reed? He's a cosmic being, for one. And two, he wants him so that Franklin can take his place and solve his appetite to constantly needed to consume planets. That constant hunger. He thinks Franklin Reed is his key to release. Well, of course, Sue Storm's not having that. So, you know, Johnny attacks Galactus. He's throwing flames at him and distracted him. And Shia LaBeouf, you know, he's fighting the Silver Surfer. They're trying to escape. It's a pretty cool action scene. Much better than that mess we got in the Pocket Dimension in Superman. Because Galactus just looks good. The CGI for him looks good, especially when he's on his ship. It's dark. And yes, while it's dark, you can still make out the detail on Galactus. You know? But they escape his ship somehow. I'm still looking like, you know, I feel like this should be harder than what it is. But they do make it out. And this is really neat chase scene where Shia LaBeouf is also in pursuit of them when they're leaving Galactus' ship. And she follows them into like light speed. Is so cool. And that whole how Reed uses his mind to, you know, trap her essentially in a black hole. Although it should have tore the ship apart. Don't get me started on that. I mean, you got to suspend disbelief. But I'm like, hold on. If we're using the science to trap her into the event horizon of a black hole, then your ship should also be tore apart too. No matter what it's made out of. It should be tore apart. But they're able to jump back and head to Earth. They said it's going to take her a month or something like that. 6 months or something like that to escape the event horizon of the black hole. You know, because the closer you get, the more time slows down for you. And it just constantly looks like you're falling, in theory. Because guess what? Nobody has been down into one to confirm or deny that. But they're able to escape her, get back to Earth, and they start formulating a plan to prepare for Galactus. And they come up with this idea after the Sue Storm speech that had me really like, no effing way. There's got to be a better plan. But Reed gets this bright idea to teleport the Earth and put it into another solar system within 2 to 3% of the inhabitable zone. A lot of problems with this. I'm not the smartest man in the MCU. Not even the smartest man, you know, on the block probably. But I will say this. How in the hell can we teleport Earth even for a millisecond the moment it stops spinning in our own sun's gravity? Everything is going to shit. Let alone he was only going to teleport the moon and the Earth, not the sun. He would have had to take the sun too. If not, if we drop out of we drop out of the sun's orbit, that's a wrap. Reed should have knew this, or at least considered the risk of this, but he didn't. They spent months, all the nations on Earth 828 get together. It's this major, building event and progress initiative where they're building these bridges to build one giant teleportation device. Although I will say, I thought the way Reed's science was working, at least in his shop when he teleports an egg, mind you, a non-moving spinning object, it goes from like one teleporter to another. So if he's going to teleport Earth, wouldn't that mean that, yes, you have the bridge here that you can put the Earth in the teleport, but doesn't that mean something needs to be on the other end to receive it? If you think about teleportation, you're thinking about breaking down molecules. Billions, trillions of molecules. Every living thing on Earth, the Earth itself. And moving it. And they thought that was easier than maybe trying to trap, Galactus before he gets to Earth? And something similar? Needless to say, thank goodness that plan did not work, because Shia LaBeouf makes it out of the event horizon and destroys the bridges, systematically, all but obviously the one in New York City. Of course, obviously, all but the one in New York City, right? And I also have a problem with that in the movie, because once she did that and Galactus eventually slow crawls and makes his way to Earth while everybody's panicking and Earth is, evacuated to Subterranea, Mole Man's world, which, his character was pretty funny, and his cameo scenes he had wasn't bad. It wasn't even cameo scenes. It appeared at least 3-4 times in the movie. So all of New York City is underground to have the whole, no casualties argument. They did the evacuation thing. So that's why when you see the trailers, Fantastic Four is in New York City, there isn't any real, danger or threat for the lives of New York City residents, again, because they're all underground. But when Galactus does get there, he's walking through the town, he's making his way. They're trying to trick him into with these two baby car seats, super fancy baby car seats that Reed designs. That's meant to lure Galactus towards the portal. Long story short, they're going to beam him off to somewhere that's going to take 1,000,000 years for them to find him. Obviously nobody will be around for that when dude comes back, or if he'll even be able to find Earth again. But that's their goal. That's their end game. Now I'm sitting here thinking, there's no way this plan is going to work. Just like the teleportation Earth beam thing. There's no way this plan is going to work. There's no way this plan is going to work. Why are they trying to trick Galactus into walking into this portal? He's not stupid. He's a 1,000,000+ old space god. Even they refer to him as that, a space god. And they think they can trick him with an empty car seat, as if his scanny eyes won't be able to tell that it's empty. And so, yes, as he's making his way there, and they're not fighting him, they're just letting him get there because they're waiting for the signal so they can hit the button, and he gets there, he stops before he crosses the line, looks over just randomly, scans the Baxter building, sees the baby gate, or baby crib with Herbie, was a great side character, by the way, and starts making his way to the Baxter building. Holy crap. Even I was like, oh boy, now you got to fight him. And that's when it gets real. The Fantastic Four family takes their final steps and go into full, or at least they try to engage in combat with Galactus. My biggest issue here during that fight, which again, the fight was one of the better climactic final battle scenes in a comic book movie that I've seen in a very long time. With the stakes and, the action that's going on, the characters involved, with the exception of Shia LaBeouf's Silver Surfer. She disappeared for that whole segment, or that whole part of the fight, up until, they're able to get Galactus, they're able to battle him back into the portal. And he's halfway in there, but he crawls back out. It's looking like Johnny Storm is getting ready to sacrifice himself. And it looked believable, because I'm like, I don't know how they're going to get him in there. You know what I mean? And so, as he's getting ready to fly in there, bam, Silver Surfer pops out of nowhere. Hits his chest, boom. He falls into the portal. Movie over. Earth 828 is saved. Right. I was going in with the leading theory that Earth 8, whatever Earth the Fantastic Four was going to be on, was going to be destroyed by Galactus, compromised by Galactus, or they had to flee as refugees or something. And that's why they ended up, or their ship ended up in an extra dimensional portal on a sacred timeline. But no, they do it. They save the day. Sue Storm exerts herself during that process. She's the one using her boop, 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 powers to push, Galactus into it. And she's just like, boom, and Reed's like, Sue, you're going too hard. He ain't say that, but his face looked like he wanted to. And she's just, I don't care, get away from my baby. Using her, whoop, 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 pushing Galactus into the black hole. And it worked. Until it didn't, Because once Shalla Silver Surfer, sacrifices herself, Sue also collapses. Sue is, presumably DEAD. Okay? She's not breathing. She's not moving. Everybody's crying. Reed takes Franklin. This is another where I'm kind of like, ugh. Didn't really like this part. But Reed takes Franklin, puts Franklin on the baby chest, and the CGI for the baby looked weird at times. But the baby is like doing some weird things with his hands. Next thing you know, Sue eyes open up. She takes a breath of life. She's alive. And everybody's just looking like, this is normal. What just happened? Because Galactus tells Sue and Reed that their baby is hiding his power from them. Because Reed's like, I did the test. He's normal. Ain't nothing. He's different. He's not different. He's normal. But Galactus tells Reed and Sue, the whole team, that the baby is hiding. Even in the womb, the baby is concealing his true power. Something to that extent. And I'm like, wow, that's heavy. Baby is powerful. Can't even walk yet. And he reviving, bringing people back to life. Baby can't walk yet. Baby even claps when Sue, I kid you not, baby claps. And I'm like, it's a little cringe. But the baby claps when Sue gets up. Like the baby is too aware to what's going on, And then they all make out happily ever after. New York residents come up from underground, Everything goes back to normal. A lot of damage, though. New York is wrecked, right? Because of this battle with Galactus. New York is cooked, but they survive. Hell, even the Baxter Building survives, because it's in the post-credit scene. But Shalla Silver Surfer, the CGI looked good on her too. I didn't talk about her a whole lot when I was going through the cast. Jennifer Garner did an okay job. Not too many complaints there. I actually can see why they went with an alternative Earth Silver Surfer and not Norman Rad, which I have to honestly say I have to take it back. It was actually not a bad choice, and the CGI was heavily improved. I learned Jennifer Gardner has shared that she researched and learned just different surfing techniques so she can actually bring that character to life even more. And I can, looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, there were some moments where she's really on the board and she's really moving and making it believable, And Johnny has these funny quips back and forth about her board being a part of her body. It was just subtle comedy, right? Not meant to fly over your head, not meant to be slap in your face, but just kind of there for you to process, take in, and give a quick chuckle or laugh. Nothing too over the top, but some scenes where I did lean up, kind of holding my like, wow, more than I did in Superman. I thought some of the jokes in Superman were a little cringy. But yeah, Shalla Silver Surfer, not that bad. Just minus the fact that she disappeared and her power levels were a little over the place. Because I'm like, if she had appeared when Galactus came to Earth, she could have just flew down, grabbed the baby, and they out. Or really, the Fantastic Four as a group really should struggle against her. Maybe not Ben Grimm, but she can phase through solid material and things. Kind of like Vision. And I had just rewatched Civil War. And Vision it can really be a problem in a battle. You know what I mean? He can make himself, he can make himself lucid. He can phase through solid objects and then make himself solid again. So that's really dope. That's really neat. But anyway, Silver Surfer 2 has that ability. And she wasn't as military effective, if you will. maybe finding planet, sure. And she has this breakdown moment where she realizes, they share her backstory, and it's a little touching. There was no mention of NORAD, though, none. Just her daughter, who she sacrificed herself and planet for Galactus to be his herald. And she realized, I don't know how, that he's actually destroying all these planets. Johnny makes this clear to her what Galactus is doing, and she has a change of heart moment. I really would have liked to seen Shia LaBeouf have that moment of clarity on screen before she sacrificed herself, presumably, okay, to push Galactus through to push Galactus through the portal, and for them to close it. I would have really liked to seen her have that change of mind on screen. Even if it's through a subtle flashback, so she could have sat on the beach, picked up some sand, and maybe missed her home world, and then flew off. And the next time we see her is in running, pushing Johnny out the way and pushing herself into Galactus's chest plate. She doesn't even have any lines or words. She didn't say anything, So it was a little odd. You can tell maybe, reshoots that paid for a little bit towards the very end, as if that was like thrown in and reshot. The ending was reshot, perhaps, because she didn't say anything. No lines or anything. She talked real heavy to Johnny at nighttime when he chased her, and so he can play the recordings for her in her language as she's flying through New York City. And she says some things, and then she flies off. And that's really the last time we hear from her. So I ever had a gripe with that too. But overall, those cons isn't enough to substantially hold Fantastic Four First Steps back. The truth is, I wanted to go into the movie theater with the anticipation of this experience being that of a roller coaster. I wanted the highs, I wanted the lows, but I wanted to walk away from that machine knowing that I was thoroughly entertained. I was bought the highs, I was bought the lows, and when the ride ended, it was a well put together experience. And that was Fantastic Four First Steps. It's doing good in the box office, not by good relative to how comic book movies have performed recently. Because Marvel should be concerned. All studios should be concerned. Some of these budgets are inflated and high. Superman cost $325 million altogether to put out. And despite the box office reports and things, the movie is not yet profitable. Fantastic Four has a smaller budget, 200 million, I believe, without the marketing. 300, you could say 350 with marketing. But it had a good opening domestic and international box office, like some over 100, 200. And here we are on weekend 2. It might recruit most of that, but just keep in mind, okay, movie theaters don't release movies because they love movies. They are there to make a profit as well. So studios have to split those revenues. It's a gross amount. They have to split the revenues 40, 50%. Most times it's 40%. So, much like Superman 2025, James Gunn Superman 2025, Fantastic Four might have, had a $200 million plus opening weekend, but Marvel won't see $200 million. Marvel will see about $90 to $100 million. It's just the way it goes. But despite its box office struggles, I wouldn't necessarily say it's reflective of how good or bad the movie is. Fantastic Four First Steps. In fact, if I was to give or share my final score with you for Fantastic Four First Steps, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 with, yes, see it in the theaters while you still can. IMAX if you're able to see it in IMAX. It's worth the ticket price. Superman was not. I was a little taken back by that. But Fantastic Four First Steps, being shot in IMAX, the CGI looks clean. The sets are a blend of practical and CGI, but more practical than CGI. So the movie overall has this authentic painted coat that makes it satisfying to look at, makes you want to be in that world. So I enjoyed Fantastic Four First Steps. Made me hyped and excited for Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday. Something that I wasn't with the last past couple MCU movies and shows. Don't even get me started on the shows. But after watching Fantastic Four First Steps and knowing that it's going to involve the Fantastic Four heavy, I mean, they're in the top 5, 6 top billing cast. Pedro, Vanessa, Joseph, Ebon Moss, you know. Of course, RDJ is at the top, which we got to talk about the post-credit scene because there's a lot of chatter behind it, and I want to give a little take on it. Now, Marvel claims, because in the post-credit scene, the final credit scene is kind of trash, but the post-credit scene is the one worth sitting for. Okay? But, you know, Sue Storm is there. She's in the Baxter building. Franklin Reed is sitting there on the couch. She's reading a book to him. She gets up to get another book he likes, and Franklin's older. He's maybe 3 or 4 years old. He's an older kid now. And she walks away to get the book, has this strange feeling. You know, the atmosphere changes, the music changes, and she looks over, and it's Dr. Doom with his mask off, looking like he's, you know, brushing Franklin's hair or talking to him. And then it cuts. We don't hear nothing. We don't see nothing. Now Marvel is like, no, that was really Tony Stark who shot that scene. Was it though? Because you ain't paid this man 6 figures, presumably, allegedly, and however much his cameo, not to show that man face, not to cut that man audio, with nothing. So if that was RDJ's Victor Von Doom with his mask off and costume, why not give us a quick turnaround like they did with Thanos at the end of Avengers 2012? They didn't do that. So I'm on the fence that it was not Tony Stark. I'm sorry. Well, it definitely wasn't Tony Stark. But see, we can't. You can't separate the two. But I'm convinced it wasn't RDJ. That it just was maybe a stunt double or double in the Doom costume. Because if it was RDJ, why not show him, man? The movie theater would have went wild. I would have been like, oh man, he's back. And then the hype would have faded off. But Avengers Doomsday, you know, could spell doom for the MCU. It's on the cusp of a reboot anyway. With after that, Secret Wars in 2027. Avengers Doomsday in 2026. September, towards the end of the year, 2026. No time soon. And that's our next major MCU project. I think a lot of us is okay with that. You know, take a break from giving us 2 or 3 movies a year and a TV show at the same time, because Marvel is struggling to keep these stories connected. So give it time, let it breathe. You just threw us an alternate Earth Fantastic Four, their last biggest box office success and critically acclaimed success was Deadpool and Wolverine, another Elseworld-like story that is a part of the MCU but wasn't a part of the MCU. You know, because Deadpool Wolverine also felt like it could stand on its own weight. Although it relied heavily on nostalgia bait and memories, I will honestly admit. Nonetheless, they were really good ones, though. Gambit, Blade. Come on, man. Blade? Fighting alongside Gambit? What? I will take it. Why? Because the MCU won't give us anything like that. So if we got to get it in Deadpool Wolverine, I will take it. We just have to see what comes next with Avengers Doomsday. Again, you know, Supergirl is the next other one coming out in 2026. Another movie I'll see, but I'm not, you know, I have to go in with low expectations. I ain't going to judge it. I just got to go in with low expectations. But we got a while. And we definitely got a lot to talk about here in the upcoming months or next year. You know, just movies all together. So that was my take with Fantastic Four. You know, not a lot of complaints with the movie, just some here or there. You know, some of the scenes again weren't too over the top. There were no instances where it made me want to walk out of the movie theater. Maybe when Sue Storm is delivering the baby when they're on their way back, and I'm like, wow, she She's really delivering her baby in space, which they mentioned, the first baby delivered in space, big deal. And the first baby delivered in a faster than light tunnel, big deal. They had their ability to travel faster than light, and their plan was to teleport Earth. I cannot get behind this plan, and I'm glad it went south. If I'm going back on that. But other than that, it was a well-paced, well-put-together movie. And definitely better than I thought it was going to be. But that's all I got for this podcast episode. Y'all all know, do all the algorithmic things to help this episode reach as many eyes as possible. If you're new to Hold the Real, I welcome you to subscribe to the podcast. We do weekly podcasts, and we have so much more content types coming up, weekly videos, and a future real live show. So that's all I got. Fantastic Four first steps. It looks like they're taking baby steps, all things considered, but a solid ride, solid experience. And for once, first in a very long time, a movie that actually circumvented my expectations and was slightly better than just needing to be good.
What time is it, Ben?
No.
What time is it, Ben?
No, Johnny.
Say it!
I don't wanna!
Say it!
It's clobbering time! That's just in the cartoon.